If you like your laptops thick, then the Compaq R3000 has you covered. This beefy old Pentium 4 laptop was kindly donated by a viewer called Douglas. Anyway, let's see what it's like to use such an old, thick computer. Released in mid-2004, this massive 15.4-inch notebook weighs 3.5 kilograms, which is just under 8 pounds. One of the reasons for this being so thick has to do with the CPU that's packed inside. There's a socketed desktop Pentium 4 processor in here. For the size, you thankfully do get a lot of expandability with RAM and hard drive covers accessible on the base. There is also a JBL Pro speaker setup, which should provide a good multimedia experience. Yes, that's what this laptop was geared towards, multimedia. It's definitely a sturdily built device. We'll have to see if the Radeon 9000 graphics can handle games. And just so you get an idea of the size, here is it compared alongside an M1 13-inch MacBook Pro. Booting up the laptop, it loads into Windows ME for some reason. Perhaps the previous owner just threw in a random hard drive to test it. Wait, what's this? NordVPN? Before we take things further, I'd like to tell you that today's video is sponsored by NordVPN. NordVPN is an award-winning virtual private network. They've got super fast servers that allow your device to tunnel through and appear as if they're in other regions or countries. This is especially useful here in Australia as our Netflix kinda sucks. But with the click of a button, NordVPN encrypts my internet traffic and now I can access the far superior American Netflix. There are so many other advantages to using Nord, such as being able to protect your data while using public Wi-Fi in airports or coffee shops. Their app is simple to use and easy to download, and it's available on Windows, macOS, Linux, iOS, as well as Android. Your subscription includes 24/7 support, unlimited bandwidth, and most importantly, an automatic kill switch. And if that's not enough, there's a 30-day risk-free money-back guarantee. Go to nordvpn.com/Psivwri to get a 2-year plan plus 4 additional months at a huge discount. This helps support the channel and make your internet browsing much more secure. Once again, thank you very much to NordVPN for sponsoring this video. So I'll start off by giving the laptop a cleaning with a healthy dose of eucalyptus oil. If you ever buy secondhand electronics, I'd recommend cleaning it off as you can't see bacteria or germs on the surface. Using a toothbrush, I made sure to brush the keys as well, as this is one of the most used areas of any laptop. While overall it doesn't appear to be that dirty, there is gunk built up around a lot of recessed areas. Eucalyptus oil works wonders to remove that gunk. The screen is also not very dirty. The previous owner looks like they've put some time into wiping it off now and again. Upgrading the RAM is as easy as removing this small cover. It's already got the maximum 2GB of DDR memory, a 1GB stick, and I assume the other gigabyte is soldered to the motherboard. I'll be replacing the old IDE hard drive with an M-SATA SSD. These can be bought for around $22 online, and I'm using one of these because sadly this laptop does not use a SATA connector, so I've got to use one of these $12 IDE adapters. And to get inside this computer there are a lot of screws. Only 2 lengths, so thankfully I don't have to keep track of which ones go where. It also turns out that you don't have to remove the backplate entirely if you just want access to the processor, but I might as well take the whole thing off just to give it a dust out. And here we've got the stereo speakers with a pretty big chamber to hopefully add some more bass. It does look like one of the fans has much more dust than the other. Perhaps it only ever starts spinning up if the processor gets too hot. Either way, we've got a bit of carpet forming here on the air exhaust. The desktop Pentium 4 processor that's in here definitely needs a lot of cooling. Very hard to achieve in a laptop, even one as thick as this. Clearing away the old thermal paste reveals that this is an SL6PF, a 130nm single-thread chip with a TDP of 68 watts. This was launched back in 2002, and as far as I know, this is the original CPU that came with this laptop. But since the thermal paste hasn't turned to dust, I have a feeling that it was changed not that long ago. I removed all the dust from the cooling fins and wiped down the copper contact point with isopropyl alcohol. Now it's time to go through and brush out any of the built up dust. For a laptop that's around 17 years old, it's not surprising to see some tarnishing on the metal where dust and impurities have been sitting. All of that is largely superficial, and for the sake of this video, it isn't necessary to remove. The speaker cones are also intact. I wouldn't have been surprised if these had started to fall apart, and that also means the original owner didn't blast them too hard. When I tried to clean off the worn speaker grill, I didn't expect the paint to also come off. I ended up simply drawing over it with a permanent marker, which should blend in a little bit nicer when dry. Although one thing that hasn't held up as well are the plastic mounts for some of the nuts. When I removed the screws, a few broke off, and I used some super glue to piece them back together. I'll be very careful not to over tighten the screws when I put the case back on. I did some research and asked people on Twitter, and it seems the X pattern is best for these old Pentium 4 CPUs. I put a little bit more near the center, which will spread out over the die, and no, it isn't spilling over the edges, I checked it myself. And before I put the casing back on, I thought I would make sure that both fans do indeed spin. The answer is yes, but one of the fans must only be active under intense load though. To make sure that the screws don't loosen over time, I applied a tiny amount of thread locker, which, as the name suggests, locks the thread. You'll see this on the end of pretty much every screw in a laptop. And with it back together, it was making some very concerning fan noises. I opened it up again to quickly realize that one of the covers was rubbing against the fan blades, and that explains the grinding sounds. All I had to do was bend the metal outwards as it was when I first took it apart. It no longer sounds like a power tool, and looking in the BIOS, the mSATA SSD is thankfully detected. I went ahead and installed a fresh copy of Windows XP Pro, and I must say the laptop is looking a whole lot better now. For a 17-year-old machine, I think it's aesthetically held up pretty well. Yes, it's definitely thick, even by 2004 standards, but that came with a trade-off of a solid 2.8 GHz Pentium 4 processor. Now let's try playing some games and see just what this old machine is capable of. The system boots up very quickly thanks to the mSATA SSD. To help play some games, we've got the sweat-proof Zephyr Pro Mouse kindly sent over by Muzback. It's honestly pretty nice and I've been using it a lot lately. It's got programmable RGB lighting, a high-quality optical sensor, and a small fan that helps keep your palms cool. If you want to get one at a discounted price and help support my channel, feel free to use my affiliate link in the description. First up, I tried playing some old school Runescape. It ran pretty well on this laptop, very playable. Even when this laptop was released, the Radeon 9000 graphics, which shared the DDR RAM, wasn't geared towards gaming, and as such the frame rate running at 640 by 480, even on medium settings, is a little choppy here in Halo CE. Another 3D game I like to test is Grand Theft Auto 3. With a resolution of 800 by 600 at the default graphic settings, it runs pretty well. And if you're into 90s PC games, this will run them extremely well. Monster Truck Madness 2 recommends a 200 MHz Pentium, so I think this laptop is more than capable of playing this game. A game that came out slightly after this laptop was released was Star Wars Battlefront 2. It runs alright, but there are some weird graphical glitches. While the latest versions of Minecraft simply wouldn't load, I found that version 1.0 did. Even still, the frame rate is very choppy, and if you want you can join my Minecraft server, which is listed on screen now.
It's not what I'd call powerful.
I was honestly surprised to see that YouTube videos would play. I mean, not very well, but they do run. And while we're in Windows XP, why don't I create some artwork in Microsoft Paint? I used to spend many hours as a kid creating these sorts of masterpieces. So there we have a feature-rich chunker from 2004. These kinds of laptops are becoming hard to find as most people don't see them having any value, so they just get thrown out most of the time. It was definitely good to get one looking very clean once again. Hopefully you can find one too, and keep it running for many more years to come. Thank you very much for watching. I've honestly always been very fascinated by these early Pentium 4 computers and just how big they had to be to accommodate such a CPU. Anyway, also big thank you to Douglas for giving me this laptop, and if you want to see more videos, definitely consider subscribing, and if you like this one, feel free to leave a like. I'll see you in the next video.